Who do you think Harris will pick as her running mate?
I think it's going to be Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro is a very dynamic speaker. He's the governor of the biggest battleground state in the country. It's electoral votes that Kamala Harris absolutely needs, and it's the demographic that he also needs. It's a state with a lot of blue collar workers, two big cities. But it isn't just about Pennsylvania. It's about Josh Shapiro himself. He's very smart, as I said, dynamic, and I think voters are going to really warm to him.
And Chris, I think we have some consensus here, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I would love to zag when Linda zigged, but no, I think it's, no, not at all. I think it's Josh Shapiro too, which it doesn't mean that things couldn't change. But if I was Kamala Harris, given what she needs, I would pick Josh Shapiro. There are paths to 270 electoral votes without Pennsylvania for Kamala Harris. There just aren't many, and they're not all that plausible. There's no other person in that state who's got a 60+% approval rating and won an election 2 years ago in that state, and has a political machine in that state. So for me, this is, you got to win the White House before you worry about governing, and this to me is a pick that helps you win.
All right, for the people who are watching who may not be familiar with him, I want to play just a little piece of tape so they can see and hear him. Here we go.
Governor, J.D. Vance just said this about you, and these are his words, quote, he compared you to a really bad impression of Barack Obama. What is your response to that?
Is that what he said? That's great. I love how we get the real-time quotes here. I mean, look, I don't know. Barack Obama was probably our most gifted orator of my time, so it's kind of a weird insult, I guess. But look, I'll say this about J.D. Vance. It is real hard being honest with the American people when you're not being honest with yourself. J.D. Vance is a total phony baloney.
Chris, I have to keep reminding myself that it was only 2 weeks ago, because it feels like far longer, that President Biden kind of stunned us all with that post saying that he was not going to run for re-election. I think his departure energize the race. We're about to hear who the vice presidential candidate would be. And as I hear that clip, again, I kind of sense that is going to energize the race as well. But Chris, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, Kamala Harris would ideally probably want more time to sort of vet her potential running mates, but this is the situation you have. And I do think this will matter to some extent because it's the one big decision she gets to make in the race, right? If people want to trust her as president, the only real decision, you can take a lot of policy positions and all that sort of stuff, but the only real decision you get to make that shows this is the kind of government I want to run is who you pick for VP. So I do think it will matter. And again, it's important to note, matter marginally. Putting Josh Shapiro on the ticket, for example, does not mean Kamala Harris is going to win Pennsylvania 60-40 over Donald Trump. We're talking at the margins. People still vote for the name at the top of that ticket. So you're looking for someone who can help you at the margins. And to my mind, Shapiro is that person.
Linda, everything in this race has been compressed because of how recently Joe Biden stepped back. And so one of those things is the vetting of vice presidential candidates. Arguably, Donald Trump maybe didn't have enough time to properly vet J.D. Vance, and maybe it depends on people's perspective. But do you think it's a concern at all that the Democrats are being forced to make a decision here in an unusually short period of time?
I mean, it's always a concern. In history, we've had running mates who, even with gobs of time to vet them, have proved to be terribly problematic. We've had running mates who've had to drop out. In this case, Kamala Harris has known Josh Shapiro for a long time. They were both attorneys general of their respective states at the same time. And I'm told that they do have a personal bond. What I'm also told is that Josh Shapiro is a very ambitious man, and that is a point of concern among some Democrats, that he's just so ambitious that if he becomes vice president, he's going to spend the whole time just trying to build up himself. I think, you know, if you're Kamala Harris, you worry about that later. You want to get elected. Her number one and only task at the moment is just to win the election and to beat Donald Trump. Josh Shapiro is very smart. He's very charismatic. I think I can't wait to see a debate between him and JD Vance. Now, having said all this, with this great consensus here about Josh Shapiro, there are other people that she's talking to. The governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, senator from Arizona, former astronaut Mark Kelly, a few others. So, you know, watch us all be proved wrong, although somehow I don't think so.
Okay, and Chris, maybe last word to you on that. Let's hedge our bets a little bit. Both of you clearly feel it'll be Josh Shapiro, but who are the other people that we should at least keep in our consideration? Because it's so important who we consider.
Yeah. Well, I do think there's so much reporting on this that we do have a general sense of kind of the short list. There are very few surprises at this point, but Belinda's right. I do think Tim Walz, who's the governor of Minnesota, is not someone a lot of people were talking about a month ago, but he is the governor of a Midwestern state. Obviously, the Midwest is critical. He's a member of Congress before that, grew up in a rural community, sort of a straight talking message. So I think that's potentially appealing, but I don't think it's him. I would not be stunned if it was Mark Kelly for the reasons Linda mentioned. Astronaut, military, senator, married to Gabby Giffords, who's become the face of gun control in this country after she was a victim of gun violence when she was a member of Congress. So that wouldn't, he's from a swing state. That wouldn't stun me.
Well, the time-space continuum has shifted. Everything is moving really quickly, and we're going to find out very soon. Chris, Linda, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian.
Sure. Good to be here.